Good morning, good afternoon to our esteemed panelists, dedicated colleagues that are joining us every 2 weeks, and all our valued participants joining us today. My name is Ziad Alexander Hayek, President of WAP, and delighted to welcome you to the 9th session of our series on small-scale PPPs. As we continue our bi-weekly meetings in 2024, our commitment to leveraging small-scale PPPs as a vehicle for achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals remains robust. Our journey began with establishing a foundational understanding of small-scale PPPs. What is the definition of small-scale PPPs? Subsequent sessions have addressed the challenges these initiatives face. We explored potential solutions in session 3 and assessed the effectiveness of various strategies through in-depth analysis and shared experiences in the later sessions. In our last 3 sessions, we presented and examined case studies from different sectors and regions, gaining insights into practical applications and diverse experiences in small-scale PPPs. Today, we take a significant step forward by shifting our focus to the critical role of technology in fostering a conducive environment for these partnerships. So this is very important because, as we said, our definition of small-scale PPPs are those projects where the cost of preparing the project is too high a percentage of the cost of executing it. So it is a ratio of cost of preparation, meaning designing, tendering, all that monitoring, versus the CapEx of the project and related expenses. And so it is very important for us to minimize that nominator in that ratio. And it is crucial for us to see how technology can help us do that. So this is our session today. I'm delighted to introduce the moderator for this session, Dr. Naresh Bhanna. He's a peer-recognized international PPP consultant and subject matter expert with Government of India owned entity NHLML. He is a steering committee member and co-founder of WAP. And he heads the South Asia chapter for WAP, as well as our railroad initiatives. So thank you very much, Naresh, for agreeing to moderate this session today. As an exception, I'm happy to be a discussant today, not just introduce it. So I look forward to continuing to be with you throughout this session. Over to you, Naresh.
Thank you, Ziad, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. And I'm really privileged to be here where you are watching from almost more than 142 countries. And I'm delighted. Today, we'll explore how technology can transform small-scale PPPs, focusing on innovative tools and methods that can overcome challenges and enhance project outcomes. Our discussion is going to highlight how these technological solutions can drive the success of these partnerships. Let's start our exploration of these dynamic solutions. Towards that, we are fortunate to have a great panel of seasoned experts, each offering a unique perspective and rich insights into our topic. The first one on the panel is the renowned Andy Potter. Andy began his career in early days of 90s in the digital media industry. In 2002, he co-designed an industry-first cloud software as a service solution for UK education sector, which is still in use over 20 years later by more than 13,000 schools. I request Andy to talk a little more about yourself. Please, Andy.
Thank you, Dr. Naresh, and hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you to everyone involved in organizing these wonderful sessions, and a special thanks to Ziad for inviting me to join this session. I celebrated my 52nd birthday this week, which was a great reminder that I've been in the IT industry for almost 30 years, and very interestingly mentioning the education sector cloud solution that I helped develop in 2002. I suppose the interesting part of that really is that we are still talking about the introduction of cloud and software as a service as a way of reducing costs and accelerating efficiencies in IT. 22 years later, and it still sounds like a new idea, but I promise you, we've been on this journey for a very long time. So it's wonderful to join you, and thank you to everyone for inviting me to participate. Thank you.
Next, we have Nasser Masood, founder and MD of Concept Realization, a famous consultancy based out of Dubai. He has over 29 years of PPP experience covering strategy, project preparation, transactions, and monitoring. Can I request Nasser to give a little more insight about you yourself?
With pleasure, Naresh. Thank you. Importantly, I was one of the first people to join WAP back in November 2018 when Ziad first announced it when we were all in Geneva on a UNICE meeting. And it's recently, really in the last year, that I've taken on leadership positions within WAP. So delighted to be leading the chapter on social sector PPPs. And of course, both small-scale PPPs and technology in PPPs are really quite fundamental to this particular topic. So myself, yeah, I've been, as you mentioned, 29 years as a practitioner in public-private partnerships and specializing in the social sector. My background is combined between civil engineering to start off with, then economics and management. I have also a master's in finance, and I'm a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, which eventually I realized it put me very well for doing this kind of work in public-private partnerships. The sectors that we talk about within health, education, long-term care, and affordable housing and government services and so on are really quite fundamental to the well-being of societies in general, and therefore really look forward to this panel and to more and more of these. Thank you.
Thank you, Nasser. And our third panelist is none other than President of WAP, the indomitable Ziad Alexander Hayek. And I'm not going to leave the chance of introducing him myself. So you all know him. He has more than 44 years of experience in investment banking, corporate strategy, technology, public policy, public-private partnerships. In fact, this small-scale PPPs year-long sessions are his brainchild. In 2019, he was even nominated to be the president of World Bank. He is currently the head of Global Alliance of Hypercycle AI, going to be unicorn, and co-founder of Earth-64. Previously, he was vice chair of the UN Working Party on PPP, Secretary General of Lebanon's High Council for Privatization, a cabinet-level position, and CEO of Longbridge Associates, Senior Managing Director of Bear Stearns, President of Indo-Suez Mexico, Head of International Securitization at Citibank, Vice President at Salomon Brothers. He is and has been a member of board of multiple companies, banks, universities, NGOs, and technology startups. Let's embark on this insightful journey together, fostering a dialogue that inspires us all and leads to actionable outcomes.
Thank you, Naresh. Nobody has given my CV on before. I appreciate it.
Thank you for giving me this privilege this afternoon. And now let me extend a warm invitation to all attendees from all over the planet Earth to actively participate in today's session. Your inputs are highly valued, and we encourage you to share your comments and questions using the dedicated Q&A tab on your screen. Kindly do that. Additionally, feel free to utilize the chat function to engage with fellow participants and exchange thoughts. We anticipate an engaging and interactive discussion, free-flowing, and I will be selecting a diverse range of comments and questions from the audience to present to our esteemed panelists as we conclude the session. To our panelists, today's roundtable discussion will be a free-flowing format. I'll pose a question to the panel to be responded by each of you with a response time of approximately 2 to 3 minutes per question. Now, coming to our first question, you all appreciate that how technology is transforming almost all aspects of life. So, as far as small-scale PPPs are concerned, my question is that how can technology impact the small-scale PPPs by reducing the transaction costs at each stage of the life cycle of the project, right from ideation, prioritization, feasibility study, detailed project report, financial modeling, project procurement, which is itself is a big domain, financial close, project construction, operations, stakeholder management, and handover. Andy, would you like to respond first?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Naresh. Well, I was so excited to tell you all how old I was that I forgot to actually introduce myself. So my name is Andy Potter, and I'm the Business Development Director for Europe, Middle East, and Africa for a cloud software as a service solution called Ansarada Procure, which has been used to help streamline over $1 trillion of PPP procurement, preparation and procurement. And I love this question, Naresh, because the question is not can technology help, but the question is how can technology help? And so I think in this session, we can really get into some nitty-gritty and actually talk about exactly how technology helps the process and helps to reduce costs. I've listened to these wonderful sessions, and sort of two themes have emerged for me when we talk about small-scale PPPs, which are so important that these projects succeed. We often talk about large and high-value PPPs that attract a great deal of media attention and they win awards. But when you actually think about sort of municipal PPPs, where you're dealing with wastewater, or you're building a health clinic, maybe not a university hospital, but a health clinic that actually helps to reduce infant mortality in a particular community, or independent water production or independent power production. These really are, and Nasir touched on it a second ago, sort of projects that directly change communities and lives. And so it's so important that we do everything we can to try and help them succeed. And so the really good news is that technology can help to reduce the cost and to accelerate these projects. And if I just touch on, first of all, just to try and begin sort of to have a common understanding of what we mean when we talk about cloud and software as a service versus traditional IT. I think when people think about technology, very often they think about high adoption costs, long implementation cycles, dedicated consultants doing functional designs, and then mapping business processes and customizing applications. And very often, those projects cost a fortune to implement. They can take 12 months or 2 years to actually implement that software before it delivers any real results. And then there's ongoing maintenance costs, and somebody needs to know how exactly the software was configured so they can support it. And so traditionally, there's a lot of barriers to entry when you think about adopting technology to help accelerate projects. And the fantastic analogy with cloud software as a service, I suppose, is you sitting at home, and instead of calling somebody to install a satellite dish and a cable, and a wire needs to be run from the roof of your house down the walls and through the wall and behind the unit and connect so that you can watch cable, and then you need to subscribe and set up a direct debit, and now all of a sudden you have access to these channels. Instead, you can log on to your laptop or your smart television and subscribe to Netflix or Apple TV and immediately have access to this world of content. And this really is analogous to cloud software as a service. Rather than months and months of implementation, you can switch on a cloud software as a service solution and activate it within an hour, be using technology on a small scale PPP that some of the biggest PPPs in the world have used in a way that is cost effective. And so speed of execution, ease of use, the cost of ownership, and the ability to exit a contract when you finish a project and have no additional ongoing costs, just to switch it on, to use it to help manage your project more effectively, which I'll talk about a little bit more in the later sections, and then switch it off when you don't need it. If we can do that, and if that technology can help to accelerate the process, and it can help to reduce the costs of running those processes, then I really think cloud software as a service solution like Answer or to Procure, can really help to deliver small scale PPPs. Thanks, Naresh.
Okay, Nasser.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what Andy described as kind of applications and cloud-based documentation and so on can seriously help transform the process and bring a lot of improvements and efficiency into them. The problem is, of course, and you did want this to be a debate rather than a straight kind of Q&A. The issue, of course, is that they're always seen as an additional cost. And I'm saying that because we're doing what we're doing anyway. So we have to, write out the project documentation, the ITB, do the evaluation. And then on top of that, we now have to pay a subscription per user to use a piece of software. And you know what? Maybe if we didn't have to pay that subscription, we'd just save that subscription money. So I think the crux of it is really in bringing in that process improvement, so that subscription is bringing in, a 5-fold reduction in that subscription fee in the And I think one of the key resource costs, and I often kind of remark about this, that we're always reinventing the wheel. So, we find that we're yet again starting a draft of something from scratch when it's been drafted 100 times before. So I think what we need, Andy, is a platform like yours that acts also as a knowledge share hub. Now, of course, if you look at the big consultancy firms and the way we operate as a small firm, we do share knowledge, but usually within what we've done. But there are some documents that are quite available worldwide, like almost in many countries. Every public tender is announced publicly. The documentation, even if you have to purchase it, is also available publicly. The results, the final contract that's signed, so we know that that was a bankable deal. And we will know a few years on whether it was a good deal or a bad deal by virtue of the benefits and so on that it brought. So if you can also have a knowledge sharing hub that then allows professionals access to it so that they're not having to reinvent them, so that they can access what's the best in practice, and they can work out what's best in practice from whether it's scale wise, and here we are talking about small scale, but also sector wise, region wise, and so on. That can actually give quite a lot of efficiency gain and will make it even more beneficial and cost worthy for the subscription models that we're talking about.
And Nasser, that was a very good point you made about knowledge sharing hub. Now let me seek views of Ziad. Ziad.
Thanks, Naresh. Look, I think, I'm going to go back to the context of putting our discussion in the context of reducing the cost of project preparation and tendering, et cetera, et cetera. So we've been using technology in PPP for a very long time. Obviously, not only, like spreadsheets to do financial modeling, but also GIS systems to evaluate feasibility of projects. We have done, the technology has been utilized throughout as a tool. The new thing in technology is AI. That is this new incarnation of technology. And I think this is what's exciting at this point in time. So, even from the beginning, you start with looking at the project feasibility. You might be looking at AI being integrated into everything from your GIS data to your to your satellite data, to your wind atlas data, to climate, whatever. So it used to be that you needed to go to each one of these entities by themselves and get the data and then sit and look at it. And it might be in different formats. Some of it is in PDF, some of it is in Excel, some of it is, and how to put it all together was a difficult thing. Now, I mean, if you have an AI engine that is trained on that data, you can just simply ask a question and you will get the answer from all these integrated sources, regardless of what format they are in. That obviously, hugely simplifies the cost of even, I haven't gone into the process. I'm just talking about just the idea of looking at whether a project is feasible or not. And so I would like to, the thing here is that this new technology is enabling us to think about small-scale PPP, small-scale PPP that, it's reducing tremendously the cost of preparation of projects.
That's great. So essentially, you have underlined the role AI can play. And with that, let me come to the next question that we all appreciate. The risk identification and mitigation and management is an important part of our entire PPP journey. And the role which technology has been playing and AI can play is better understood by you, the experts. So with that, may I ask you, how can technology help in risk identification for small-scale PPPs, risk sharing, risk mitigation, and risk handling using AI, analytics, and real-time monitoring? Nasser?
Yeah, I think first of all, technology can make a big scale PPP a small scale PPP. I think that's the point we should always motivate. We have to ask ourselves the question: does a piece of infrastructure actually need to be built, or can the service be delivered more effectively by less infrastructure and more technology? And I'll bring as an example long-term care or assisted living. We tend to think of elderly care as something where you need to build an old people's home, whatever you want to call it. There are more politically correct terms for it, and move the elderly from their home. Yes, that is a way of doing it, but actually that misses the point, because elderly care is a whole spectrum of care, starting from very basic assisted living and remote monitoring. And it's actually much more conducive and much better for the individual to stay where they are, living within their community, but at the same time being given a level of care that is suitable for their stage of care in life. And technology nowadays can be extremely helpful for that. So you can imagine wearables and monitoring gadgets and so on that can tell you if an elderly person has some clinical indicators that need to be attended to, or has had a fall, and also to have the ability to go and visit them, so supplemented with a service and so on, as opposed to just building more facilities and bringing and moving people out. And you can see the same, we all experienced it during the pandemic with remote learning, with massive online courses, open courses in medicine, in telemedicine, in telehealth and so on. So there are many ways where you can bring efficiency. And we know, for example, I mean, this is unrelated to PPPs, that there was a big surplus of in the commercial property market soon after the pandemic, because a lot of corporates realized they no longer need as much office space, since actually people prefer to work some of the time from home, and it saves them money to have less office space. So to kind of answer your question, yes, technology can bring a lot of efficiency into the method of delivering the service, and can actually render what you can consider to be a large-scale PPP, a small-scale PPP.
Thank you, Nasser. especially highlighting the way AI can play a role in a PPP, small PPP like elderly care. And now let me ask Andy that specific to the risks which you have been addressing in most of your endeavors, could you just give a little more focused response on the risk part of how that could be handled by using technology and AI?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I'm going to leave it to Ziad to speak about AI in terms of risk identification and mitigation. But what I'd like to do is talk about risk in terms of the preparation and procurement process, and streamlining and monitoring of risk within that life cycle. And you know, I really enjoyed Nessa's point there. Thank you, Nessa. And you know, we've got some fantastic sort of stories from clients where, you know, we've had not a small scale PPP, but Sydney Metro, for example, explained to us exactly how they used to run a process where they would have security guards and tender boxes and security vans and 3 different vans and taking boxes of responses on tenders to secure rooms, and 3 months of opening committees trying to check documents for compliance, and how that process is reduced to 1 week when they adopted Answer to Procure to manage that process. So the type of cost saving that we're talking about by using technology far outweighs the cost itself of the actual technology. And I think that's a really important point when you're making a business case to try and adopt technology to increase efficiency and speed. But the first thing that I want to talk about in a really practical way is about knowledge sharing, as Nasir raised, and about creating a repeatable workflow methodology. So I want to encourage everybody on this session to stay till the end of the session. And at the end of the session, I'm going to share a link with you. And I'm going to extend an offer that I've made in the past to WAP members to access Answer to Procure for free to support the preparation phase of your project. And so I'll put that link up at the end of the session. And what I want to encourage members to think about doing is to use that free access to agree and to work together to create a methodology that you believe represents best practice in streamlining the workflow process of how you prepare for a small scale PPP to go from feasibility through to market sounding, through to procurement, and to the award of the contract. You're welcome to use that technology for free, to collaborate and to see if you can share knowledge. And Nasir, you know, what we love to see in our workflow tool is a process map that starts with different tasks and stages of information you need to collect, which you can use AI tools to help accelerate and to do, but also within that process to actually map out approvals of different stages of needs analysis and options analysis and bankability, and to include the people who actually need to approve those things so they can read the documents and they can upload their approvals, and to create different stages in that methodology. Once you've mapped out that methodology in Answer to Procure, you can save that as a template. And every time you start a project, you can just choose the relevant template for your type of project. And what we've seen is a huge acceleration of the timeline when you can see who is responsible, when something is supposed to be done, what the next thing is that is supposed to be done, where all the relevant documents are, and you can audit with Answer to Procure whether or not anybody has read the document that you've shared with them. Even if they've downloaded the document and copied it to a USB stick, you can gamify the information to see if they've actually read the documents they're supposed to be approving within the turnaround time that they're supposed to provide the approval for. And simply that level of visibility, standardizing processes, including guidance notes, templatizing the process, making it repeatable, creating a high degree of transparency and accountability in that process can enormously accelerate the process. And within that, you can identify the risk of delays, the risks of lack of participation. You can look at dashboards where you can see the next activities that are due, things that are running behind schedule, and all of that sort of management of risk can help to keep your preparation and procurement process on track. I'll leave it there lest I speak for the rest of the hour. Thanks.
Thanks, Andy. That's very good insight into how those risks which are generally not talked about can be handled with your kind of system. Now, let me request Ziad to please dwell upon this risk.
Thank you, Naresh, and Andy, very interesting what you are saying. I think this is super important for small-scale PPPs, gamifying the technology, making it easily accessible, being able to monitor, as you said, who read what document, etc. And this is not just PPP units putting some stuff in their data room. This is about the PPP unit being able to monitor the actions of a subnational entity. For example, if a municipality is doing a small-scale PPP using standard documents issued by the PPP unit, then it makes a lot of sense how to make sure that the process is being followed correctly. And there are other things, of course. So I want to take a step back and say, where AI can be applied in the fashion that you're describing, in that nitty-gritty detail of the PPP process. So you start with a feasibility study. And a feasibility study, I talked about where, how you can use AI. Then you are looking at all your environmental and social impact assessments. And for every the environmental data is available in many places. If it's not available, it's collected, but then needs to be analyzed. All of that work can be done much more efficiently with AI. Like I said, integrating your data about wind, solar, satellite imagery, all of that stuff. Then you have the costing of the project, and the costing of the project is about because both the public sector entity and a bidder have to cost a project. They have to figure out, but that's essential part of the financial model. A lot of the information can be obtained through AI as well. Looking at market sounding, reaching out to stakeholders, consultations with stakeholders can be done online. Inviting people to contribute their comments, whether it is on documents or on designs, or whether it is, on their needs. Data room, of course, very important, and Ansarada has a whole system for doing that. Even building a financial model can be automated in many ways these days. The bid, the transparency, of course, the financial close, but even before that, the tender preparation, the bid preparation. We already know that even if you go to something as simple as ChatGPT, I'm not talking about like sophisticated, anything more sophisticated than that or more customized than that. Even if you go to ChatGPT, they have modules for bid preparation for you to submit bids for tenders. Of course, project management, monitoring, KPIs, making sure those are followed. Scheduling, operation, and maintenance. All of these things are risks. I mean, each one of these steps is a risk in the preparation of a project and launching it. And insurance aspects. Insurance companies can now look at certain risks and be able to, through AI, be able to quantify them better and therefore be more competitive in quoting insurance premiums. I don't want to stop here without mentioning that, of course, there are risks associated with AI. So if you hear me being very positive and optimistic, I don't want it to be taken as I'm oblivious to the risks that are posed nowadays. I mean, we've all heard about hallucinations in large language models. You may be asking for some information. You want to make sure that in your feasibility study, your AI model is not creating an unrealistic a situation for you and inventing data or otherwise. But as I was mentioning, I'm at the Istanbul UNECE PPP forum, and we were talking about this subject this morning. I was mentioning there, somebody was saying, "But okay, how would you do that? How do you trust the AI that it is going to deliver good information to you?" And I said, "Look, I'm a sailor, and when I learned sailing, GPS systems were still not very trusted, and people maybe had one GPS instrument on board, and it cost a hefty sum. Not like today, where you can have 6 different GPS instruments on board, and if one fails, you can use the other. So in those days, we had to learn not to use the GPS system, of course, because it makes your life easier, but you also had to do dead reckoning. You had to chart your position on a physical chart. You had to do celestial navigation to know where you are at sea. And this is where we are with AI today. So it is a tool to be used, but you have to make sure you do what President Ronald Reagan had said about the ICBM treaties and START treaties. He says, you need to trust and verify. So this is where we are today.
Thank you, Ziad, and especially highlighting the risks which are inherent in deploying the AI and the high tech. So with that, let me move on to the next question, which is another important part of the PPPs as a whole, because these are long-term contracts, sometimes spanning decades. And for that, every geography, every country, every sovereignty have their own set of rules, legislative framework. So PPPs, whether big or small, they essentially require a huge amount of legal work. And this legal support is almost same for big or small PPPs. And for a small scale PPP, these costs could be prohibitive at times. And that's where as we just talked about the ChatGPT or large language models or machine learning, that how technology can come to the rescue of small PPPs and help reduce legal compliance and statutory costs without compromising. I repeat, without compromising on the quality of contract, thereby making these more economic and investor friendly. And can I ask Andy to start on this?
Maybe if I could pass over to Ziad and Nasir to talk about legal issues, first of all, legal frameworks, and then I'll speak about streamlining processes. Yes.
All right, Ziad, would you like to initiate?
Look, on the legal side of things, obviously for small scale PPPs, we have said that it is inevitable in most countries to look at certain legislative changes in legislation or in rules governing small scale PPPs. That's because it might be that the municipalities don't have the full authority to commit without the approval of the Ministry of Finance or the central unit. It might be that it's because they have the laws specify a certain minimum size of PPP projects that apply to which the PPP law applies, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of legislation changes that may need to be done in order for small-scale PPPs to exist. With regard to technology, that also applies, because you need rules and regulations that recognize, for example, anything from electronic signature of documents to acceptability of the proof of having read or signed the document from a data room or otherwise, or the municipality having used it or not. As Andy was saying, I mean, these are things that are technology is very able to deal with today, but legislation in most countries hasn't caught up with it. So, yeah, I mean, and technology is changing so quickly that many times legislation is not able to keep up with it. So really, ideally, what would happen is that laws would be written in such a way that are open to continue to allow for changes and updates to technology. So, like written in a broad sense rather than in a limited sense. I mean, the other thing is that with technology, we are able today to, and we should be able to go beyond certain aspects of sovereign identities. I explain myself. So already, for example, with Web3 and the development of the new blockchain and distributed ledgers and other things, you've seen the development of new forms of incorporation or of corporation, such as the decentralized autonomous organizations, the DAO. Most countries in the world today don't recognize DAOs. I think you have Switzerland and Singapore and Dubai and the state of forget, I think it's maybe Wisconsin or Minnesota or Idaho, one of those states. I forget which one. So, I mean, these are things that with the development of technology, you need more and more flexibility in terms of how they are stated. They may not apply to PPP immediately, and I'm not suggesting that you need that entire flexibility for PPP, but I'm saying that for small-scale PPP, you need as much flexibility as you can get because you are no longer dealing with one central PPP unit. You're dealing with, hopefully, if you want to achieve the SDGs, this is something I was saying the past 2 days. If you want to talk about PPP, we can talk about PPP all day. But if you want to talk about PPP achieving the SDGs, then we need to talk about small-scale PPP, because then you need to go to not doing 300 projects a year, but doing 10,000 projects a year. And so if you are talking about doing 10,000 projects a year, you are not going to be able to do this with a paper and pencil. You need technology, and the more technology freedom you have, the better off you are. Sorry, I speak too much.
Thank you, Ziad.
I may, Naresh.
Yeah, Nasser.
Ziad, let's talk about the kind of the legal side and then pass on to Andy. As we say in Arabic, أزيدك من الشعر بيت. Yes, it's about meeting the SDGs, and it's also about meeting them by 2030. I think people are losing sight of the number of years. And, you know, if everyone wants to spend another 2 years preparing a large-scale project, we're going to run out of time before we know it. But come to the crux of it. So, you know, you can imagine. I mean, take the kind of two broad legal systems in the world, right? The statutory legal system and the common law legal system. Common law, you'll get a contract with 400 pages. Why? Because you have to detail absolutely everything, right? Statutory law, actually, the best lawyers write the smallest contracts because they draw on statute, which you cannot change, and they keep only the very, very specifics in there. Now, you can envision a contract for PPPs where, okay, so how are we going to deal with compensation for termination for authority default? Well, there's like 2 or 3 questions you can answer. And based on that, you press a button and the clauses pop up, and that's it. You don't need to go. I mean, the legal profession will hate me for saying this, right? But you don't need to go and reinvent the wheel on this. There's a lot that's already been written, and it can apply to different jurisdictions and so on. So yes, we can use technology and AI to actually come out with a draft contract that ticks all the boxes as far as whatever you want to do in terms of risk transfer, et cetera, et cetera. And this can, by the way, apply to small-scale and to large-scale PPPs. It's not unique to it. But the other aspect of it is doing the, what we talked about, I think in the last webinar on program PPPs, where you establish like a set of documents that can apply and be replicated for a whole program of similar type of projects, but delivered in different components. But again, with technology, instead of taking that and having to reread it, you can put that set of program documentation in a piece of technology that can adapt it. So you can fill in the project particulars, you can fill in the location, you can fill in the various components, and it can then generate that document for you. I want to pick up also on, there was a comment earlier by somebody, oh, I can't put it up now. Someone added another comment and it disappeared. I think it's Chirio Lemertz from Brazil. Chirio, the point you're mentioning in the chat is really quite an interesting one, and it's about contract management. And I think that's another very important piece, that we need to interface technology with what the outputs of the project are. I mean, at the end of the day, PPPs are all about output specifications. But then we make it so cumbersome to measure the outputs that most contracts, I would say over 90% of contracts, don't measure. And I'm willing to put a bet on this. So by not measuring, you don't even know if you've realized the value that you tried to get by doing a PPP. So let's make the measurement streamlined. Let's make it possible. Let's use technology to measure. Again, whether big or small, but with small scale, it's even more fundamental, because the cost of monitoring simply cannot be borne by a small project. Yes, large projects can have a team of people doing monitoring in a manual way and so on, but small scale can't. So again, using technology to monitor the outputs, and therefore to really know whether you're getting the value or not, and to enforcing the value that you've set out to achieve in the contract, is really quite fundamental. Over to you, Andy.
Yeah, Andy.
Thank you so much, Isti and Naresh. Yes, I think creating sort of programmatic, portfolios of projects to attract wider adoption, to be able to run procurements on each different work package within those programs, simplifying processes, streamlining approvals, standardizing documents. I think these are all ways that we can accelerate projects. But I want to get really practical and just talk about some key functionalities of technology that would actually help in the preparation and procurement of these processes. And I want to propose to you that, first of all, you would want to be able to access those technologies from any device, not to be forced to have a particular type of device, or to be able to access through a phone or a tablet or a laptop or a PC, to be able to access that technology in a way that is native. And so what we're seeing in Enserada, very, very important that our technology can be used without downloading any software, without needing any third-party plugins, so that anybody that has permission to access a particular platform for a particular program of work or a particular project can immediately access that through any browser, any device, as long as they have an internet connection, without needing to download any other technology, which could be problematic for people if they have IT policy restrictions. Security is a really critical thing when managing these projects. And so one of the key characteristics of Enserada, one of the DNAs of our platform, is the ability to actually encrypt information and to allow people to access information in a digital environment, to download that information and to take it away from the platform onto another machine, to even copy that onto a USB stick or onto a hard drive, but to still have that piece of information that has been confidentially disclosed, which may be sensitive information, to still have that information wrapped in a layer of encryption. And that's the key DNA of our technology, which started as a data room platform for mergers and acquisitions. And when we started to see governments use us for large-scale PPP procurement, we started to work together with governments and include additional functionality specifically to support the preparation and procurement of PPPs. The preparation being in the workflow technology that I spoke about to standardize processes and methodologies, in the security tools that can allow you to disclose information early, but still to track who has access to it. And because those objects that are shared are encrypted, it also means that you have the ability to remove permission to that information. So if that object, which is a document, a presentation, some kind of committee meeting, or some kind of brief market sounding information, if that object that you share continues to be wrapped in a layer of encryption, you can actually remove permission for somebody to continue opening that object, even if that is sitting outside of a platform. So what that means is that you can engage with people, you can share information, and if for any reason an advisor leaves one firm and moves to another firm, if an interested party, a potential investor, recuses themselves, you can actually kill switch and remove access to that information, even if it's sitting on a USB stick. And so because that encryption is wrapped around the information, every time it's opened, it's also audited. So not only can you kill switch that information, but you can also produce detailed probity reports at the click of a button in about 30 seconds that may take otherwise weeks or months to produce, to actually prove the integrity of the process that you followed, which I think speaks to your question about legal processes as well. That enables you to also share that information with approvers, as well as with advisors and potential bidders. And so, at Encerado, we really believe that when information and processes are well ordered, it increases efficiency and speed, but it also adds confidence to investors and confidence to everybody in the process that ultimately leads just to better outcomes. And so that's what we're trying to achieve.
Oh, I was muted. So that's wonderful, Andy. And I really noted down that how if once you have given an access, you can withdraw that access, and even if that document is in some kind of USB drive, still it can be tracked and monitored. That's very good. And because in any contracting process, the confidence of the client is very important, and that has to be protected, right? So with that, let's move on to the capacity building. And as we are all aware, the challenges surrounding expertise and capacity building required for small-scale PPPs at the local level, where it is needed most, along with the critical involvement of communities, is in a very, very limited stage. And there's a huge requirement to address this deficiency. Now, how can technology, including social media and digital engagement tools, effectively enhance community involvement, stakeholder engagement, and capacity building throughout the life cycle of small PPPs, from planning to implementation and maintenance of such projects? So, Nasser, you would like to address that first?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think some of the aspects that we talk about here are kind of related to how you can achieve a sustainable solution and at the same time deliver that kind of level of efficiency. So the issue with capacity building then kind of tags onto that, because you can only have something sustainable if there is that ongoing capacity building that you have in the resource base that is actually going to be delivering that service. And to this extent, you've got two things. You've got the learning that can happen by interaction, and that is of course key to it. But then there's more formalized kind of self-help, self-learning type facilities. And I think here we can draw on the technologies in the education sector, whether it's the massive online open online courses, or the e-learning, where you can just go in and self-help in terms of your own knowledge gain. But I think what's come up quite recently is not only about how the students can learn from this, but also in that context, I'm talking here about the education context, and then I'll kind of move it on to the project delivery context. What was evident is that having this type of technology was also very supportive to the teachers themselves, improving their knowledge base and improving their skills in delivering curriculum and delivering knowledge. And I think we can take those kind of examples of technology and apply them to the workplace and see how that capacity building can continue to grow by having those technology tools available close to hand. And then you can do some monitoring and you can do some self-testing and some self-examinations as you go through. So it's not only about going in and helping yourself, but about validating to yourself that you have kind of moved on in terms of your own knowledge gain. And these are the types of tools that can really be brought into the workplace, brought in from the very specific sectors. Now, when you then look at that capacity building in terms of its impact on PPP project delivery, whether it's in the structuring or the procurement or the delivery or the monitoring, it becomes more and more profound for small-scale PPPs. Again, because you always, the one thing you're trying to do is reduce whether it's the transactional cost or the monitoring cost or the delivery cost, because of the small capex that's involved in these things. And with this, I'm going to go off video, Naresh, if I may. Okay.
You continue, yeah. And let me open it with Andy now. Andy, what's your take on that?
Yes, thanks so much. So I'm going to address this in two ways. I'll talk about capacity building and then about stakeholder engagement. And I suppose, it's terrible to answer a question with a question. But, one of the thoughts that I had in one of the previous sessions that I was listening to, Ziad, was around how we may need to sort of propose a simplified process for small-scale PPPs compared to, for example, CP3P and this sort of larger methodology. And so I suppose my question to everybody involved in this session, and if you're listening live or if you're listening to this recording, is really to say, as a community of PPP professionals, how can we collaborate to identify a simplified process that we propose as best practice to accelerate small-scale PPPs? If small-scale PPPs are truly going to help in the achievement of SDGs, then they're vital. We spoke earlier about how directly they impact communities and people's lives in such a real way. So the socioeconomic benefits are well established and well understood. So, I suppose my challenge to everybody interested in this topic is to say, let's come together and let's see if we can agree and propose a simplified process that can be standardized and templatized, that we can share together through digital technology that can be used to help with capacity development. Because if there's a process you can follow that is led step by step, and if it's something that we agree together represents best practice, and if there can be guidance notes within there, then simply it's a case of choosing the correct template for the correct type of project you're running, and then to leverage and to share that knowledge. And I don't think anyone loses in this process. I think we all potentially gain. I'm thinking, Ziad, of an example, for example, of the IFC with their scaling solar project, where they standardized documents and encouraged countries to follow a specific process. And so if there's anyone from IFC on this call, on this webinar, I would also say to you, let's take that scaling solar methodology that you've developed and let's map it out in a digital workflow process that can help accelerate the adoption of that and really increase capacity development. We're prepared to make world-class technology available for free to WAC professionals to help achieve that. The only thing anyone needs to do is to pick it up and to then actually do that. And I think we'll together see fantastic outcomes from that, And so the technology can help with capacity development, but it requires the right input so that people have the right knowledge, and that needs to come from the community of PPP professionals. And then just talk about technology and stakeholder engagement. I think we've come so far in terms of how we can use social media to engage with stakeholders early in a process, to use technology, as I said earlier, to share. As you think about the life cycle of preparation, documents start off and they're not particularly confidential. And then as business cases begin to get approved and feasibility studies begin to become more solid, things gradually get more and more and more confidential. But very often people wait to appoint, I'll use the term data room provider, although we don't think of ourselves as a data room provider, particularly because of all of the enhanced procurement functions that we offer. We're actually a very unique combination between a data room and a procurement tool, sort of mixed together. But I'll just use the term for the sake of it. What we've seen, Ziad, is that people tend to leave the adoption of a data room until the very point where they're about to launch the procurement, because the cost, they don't want to incur the cost later on. But in many of those stages of needing to do stakeholder engagement, that technology can be very, very useful to actually increase confidence with investors, to share these increasingly confidential documents. As you get closer and closer to the procurement event, information becomes ever more sensitive and confidential, and yet people continue to share information through those later stages of preparation, through email, through SharePoint systems that have no security once a document's downloaded, through Dropboxes. We've seen governments using Dropboxes, we've seen governments using Gmail, and we're saying as a world-class technology provider, everything up to that point where you launch the procurement, we're prepared to provide our technology for free to support that preparation process, to reduce risk when sharing those confidential documents, to increase your ability to engage with stakeholders and share information that you can later kill switch, that you can audit and control, and to make sure that nothing happens in that preparation process that would derail your project from success. And I can't think of reducing cost any more than something that is free. Maybe the last thing that I will say on this point is just another little analogy and a story that speaks back to Nasia's point earlier. One of the tools we have in our portfolio is to do with the digital workflow process around clarification questions. And typically the way clarification questions are handled is that they're received either through email or through a digital tool, but through those tools, they're turned into spreadsheets or they're emailed to whoever the main point of contact is for a project. And so if you end up with 200 questions, and I'm being conservative, often it's much more than that. But if you end up with hundreds of questions and somebody needs to separate those questions into legal and technical and financial questions and forward them to the correct people, that process is incredibly risky. It's incredibly time consuming, very stressful, very laborious. There's a high risk of missing a question, which can lead your whole project open to legal challenges. And so one of the fantastic pieces of feedback we had from the Queensland government, who used Answer Out of Procure on their next generation ticketing project, was that they achieved a 70% reduction in cost. And by reduction in cost, what they meant was 70% less man hours that were needed to run that process, which I would also translate, Ziad, into saying 70% faster than they used to do it in managing just the clarification process alone when they used Answer Out of Procure compared to the way they used to use it. So I think huge cost savings, huge acceleration of timescales, the ability to engage stakeholders, to disclose information, to kill switch it later if you need to, and to audit and to prove the integrity of the whole process. I've spoken for too long, Ziad, back to you.
Thank you, Andy. But that was very interesting, though long, that how the process can really lead to cost and time savings. Now, Ziad, your turn.
Thank you, Naresh. Yes, Andy covered quite a bit, and very interesting what you had to say, Andy. It's these tech aspects that we as a community need to start understanding better and knowing what is available and how it can be used to take advantage of it. Naresh, what I would only add is on the matter of stakeholder engagement is really, as we all know, through social media these days, people start talking. I mean, if you are the procuring entity, the government entity, you can just start out by dropping hints about a project that you are contemplating, considering, and then let people react to that, even to an idea, before you say, this is what we are doing. Say, we're thinking about doing this, and see. And I think this is very interesting because I don't know that PPP units have been doing that. PPP units have been announcing the project as a fait accompli, and then sometimes, doing perfunctory consultation with stakeholders just to prove that they are right in doing that project. But floating the idea on social media, attracting all the criticism that there could be, helps with identifying already what are the issues that need to be discussed. Of course, later on, getting more consultation of putting documents out for and this is very important in the context of small scale PPPs, because at the end of the day, we're talking about small communities, we're talking about a municipality, and of course, if you are the mayor of a town, you may have been elected on a certain platform, but it helps solidify that platform when you can show that there's been positive public reaction to your proposal. In terms of the other aspect of that we're talking about, which was remind me, it was like stakeholder engagement, and the other one was
capacity development, Ziad.
Capacity development, yes, thank you. And this is very important also in the case of small scale PPPs, because you cannot do small scale PPPs if the local authorities do not understand PPP. So you need to educate local authorities on PPP, but you don't need them to be CP3P certified. You don't need them to become experts on PPP. What you need to do is you need to provide a half-day explanation of what PPP is and how it can be used, and then another half-day or day on the particular education on the particular program you are launching. They need to understand how this program works, what is its governance, how the decisions are made, what are the forms to be filled out, the standard documents, how they can be filled out, how can they tender this from their side. So really, we're talking about a 2-day education process. At least the beginning part of it can be a video that is the same for everybody on what is PPP, and then a day and a half of digging into the particular program and how it can be done. And technology obviously facilitates all of that. I think that it is important for us to realize that I just want to end here, Naresh. I don't know unless you have other questions, but we don't need to go the entire time.
I have just one quick question.
Okay.
On how you are going to have methodologies based on technology and AI to have assessment guide in future for the investments in technology deployments. If I say it again, what methodologies and matrices can be developed using technology and AI to evaluate the effectiveness of the technology intervention in small scale PPPs?
Yeah, right? I know. I mean, I think this is a theoretical question at this point in time, because I don't know that I will let Nasser or Andy answer. But from my side, I think this is project by project that you need to take. And there's no answer that will fit all projects as to how to develop methodologies for following on projects. But Nasser, Andy, if you have any different opinion, please pitch in.
Andy, you'd like to throw some light on that? How to?
Sorry, Naresh, I was responding to some of the comments.
Should I read the question again?
Please, sir.
Yeah. What matrices can be developed to evaluate the effectiveness of technological intervention in small scale PPPs? That's the question.
Oh, yes, wonderful. Yes, okay. So we're talking about actual metrics and measures to say, you know, how can we compare the way in which we prepare small scale PPPs currently to how we prepare small scale PPPs once we've adopted technology? It's a great question. So my proposal really is that you need to benchmark the way in which your current process works.
Yeah.
You then need to adopt technology and then you need to benchmark how your new process works. And only once you've been through that life cycle of the old versus the new, would you actually be able to correctly assess the impact that technology has given you to accelerate those processes. And some of the things that I would suggest that you would want to monitor is the time that it took, the man hours that were involved in the project development and preparation process, the costs involved in that preparation process, the speed to market.
Andy, with all due respect, this doesn't apply this way. You know, I mean,
okay.
every project is different. You cannot assess. You know, you cannot compare a project you're doing now to how you did another project, you know, last time around. I really think this is not. I don't know. I'm go back to insisting that this is a theoretical question that doesn't have a direct answer. It is a matter of you know, you have to believe that the new technology at your fingertips makes your work more efficient, and just by making every step more efficient, you are going to make the whole more efficient.
Thank you, Ziad. And with that,
thank you, Ziad.
Take a question which is on the similar lines, has come from the audience. Kiran has asked that does any of the panelists have first-hand experience of dealing with AI for the project conceptualization or structuring PPPs? Andy, I'm sure you would like to take that on.
Well, I'd like to talk about, I mean, we use AI in terms of machine learning in our technology, not so much in the project conceptualization. Maybe that's a part that you might want to address, Ziad. But one of the ways in which we use AI is, very interestingly, to identify duplicate questions that have been asked. If you look at the procurement phase of many projects, so again, I'm talking procurement, not project conceptualization, but if you look at the procurement process of many projects, you'll actually find, if you look through the Q&A process, that many of the questions that are asked are actually repetitive in nature. And very often procuring authorities end up saying, please refer to question, please refer to answer 1, please refer to answer 7. And they just sort of continue to cycle people around. So one of the ways in which we use AI technology in our platform is to identify questions of a similar nature by the characteristics and the type of questions that are being asked. And so when somebody asks a new question, before they hit the button to submit that question, the AI tool will actually bring up the unique identification code for each of the questions that have already been asked that are similar in nature. And it encourages the bidder to click on those questions and to read the answers before they decide whether their question is unique enough to submit it. And so we've seen a huge reduction in the number of questions that are submitted. Just a very practical example of how AI is being used to increase the speed of the Q&A process in a project and to reduce the cost. And it was sort of one of the examples that led to Queensland government telling us they had a 70% reduction in cost and man hours when they used that AI tool to help manage their clarifications.
That's very smart.
And very useful. That is amazing. That is amazing. I mean, this is like really very practical example of how, you know, AI can help. Thank you, Andy. This is awesome. I didn't know that your software has this feature, and this is fantastic.
The public authorities who are on in the audience today, they will be very happy to hear this.
Yeah, indeed.
I didn't think you knew about that, so I thought you'd be pleased about that, Ziad. Just to add one more thing to that is that we also use AI when we're proposing potential answers to questions. And so when an administrator receives a question and is about to respond, they can actually see all of the similar answers that have been provided to a question. So it can prompt the bidder not to ask a repetitive question, but if it does come in and it's repetitive, it can also help the administrator to identify previous answers that have already been given, which, if they are actually, you know, very similar, means that they're reducing the number of questions they're actually sending to their legal advisors or technical advisors, and directly reducing the cost if they're paying on billable hours to answering those questions.
Wonderful. So Naresh, I'll answer this question the following way. All of us have used AI in preparing PPP projects, all of us. If you take a document, a handwritten document that's in the archives of the government, and you put it in your data room and digitize it, and use an optical character recognition program to be able to put it in digital form, that's AI. If you when you're working, you say, hey Google, can you ask a question, your voice being recognized and interpreted, that is AI. So AI we have been living with AI for a long time. Now, I think the question intended is, have you used large language models in your PPP projects? And I think I'm sure people today are using them. I have not used them, but we all are using them every day. So if somebody out there is already looking at a particular project, I have no doubt they have gone to ChatGPT and said, hey, do you have any data on the climate change for this particular region or something like this? But that, again, that is not, large language models are only a very small part of AI that is, and they are not going to lead us to artificial general intelligence. They have their limitations. I think that in PPP, we have to use those tools, like I said, but we have to verify all the time until such time, perhaps, when the tools become more sophisticated and we can rely on them more fully.
Yeah, if you allow me, I'll just share my little experience that in one of the port privatization where I'm advising, for one of the marketing part, we used the large language model and it gave out some very good inputs, whereas we were looking at the freight only to be the primary source of revenue. It brought in some more data in terms of to look at the repair part also. And when we looked at it, we found it substantial. And then it helped. So it is still being used, and it's helpful. But as you rightly said, we have to verify it with the ground realities. We cannot just take it on the face value. Yeah. Let me now see if there is any more questions. Yeah. I have one more question, that how could emerging technologies and global trends, basically, what are the global trends in use of AI and technology for small scale or PPPs in general?
The trends are there. Like I said, everybody today is using large language models for all kinds of things. Even your browser today, if you are using Microsoft Edge, it has Copilot in it. You're using. Look, I think that AI is here to stay. Its use is going to increase every day. We are at the beginning of that adoption. Where we are with AI today is like where we were with VisiCalc before Excel spreadsheets, or maybe even more backward than that. So AI, in 2 years' time, we're expecting to have artificial general intelligence. In about maybe less than 10 years' time, we're expecting to have artificial super intelligence, which means that each one of us today is 1 million times more intelligent than an ant. And ASI means that the AI is going to be 1 million times more intelligent than any one of us. So these are the kind of magnitudes we're talking about. We are not going to control AI. AI is going to be so intelligent that we need to make sure that it is done correctly. Regulations are not going to control AI. That's a whole different topic that we can talk about for hours. But I just want to say that use AI as a tool that facilitates small-scale PPPs. If you are a politician today, you are cutting 2 ribbons a year on 2 PPP projects. You need to think about programs, you need to think about combining municipalities, you need to think about philanthropy, you need to think about all the things that enable small-scale PPPs, including technology. And because then you will be cutting, a ribbon every week. So if you're a politician out there and listening to this and watching this, you need to do small-scale PPP, because that is going to put you on television once a week, cutting a ribbon.
And get to more closer to your voter. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Gentlemen,
Okay.
with that, we have sort of reached towards the end of this, our interesting discussion. And just to recap, we had very interesting interventions and the contributions, coming from industry expert and pioneer Andy Potter, and then a holistic view from Ziad, president of WAP, and certainly from Nasser, from his point of view, and some of the points which need to be reiterated is that Andy mentioned that the apparent high adoption costs of the cloud-based solutions are not really high, but they result in much efficient usage of the software and the systems. And then he went on to describe the how the process flow can be impacted, and how one of the government reduced their costs, procurement costs, by more than 70%. And certainly the most interesting part was how his software can take care of the duplicate questions or many duplicates and save on time and resources. And Nasser he started with this highlighting the need for a knowledge sharing hub, and then how simple and AI-based contents can be utilized by small-scale PPPs to be of use and to bring down their costs, and output measurement, how it can be done by having KPIs and reviewing them periodically, and use of MOOC, that is the online courses, and teaching the teachers, right? That was quite an interesting thing. As far as Ziad is concerned, we had very good interventions in terms of, whole life cycle of that how AI, because he's day in and day out on the board of the AI company. So he brought in a lot of interesting inputs. It can help in meeting the sustainable development goals, and then use of satellite imagery, insurance aspects, and risk. He also highlighted the risk of deploying AI, not only the benefits, but the risk of deploying AI, and then the stakeholder management and how it can be used in capacity building. And with that, I come to an end of this. Ziad would like to make any comment here, or should we?
No, just to invite everybody that's watching this to join us in 2 weeks' time, where we are going to have discussion session number 10 on small-scale PPPs. Thank you very much.